Hello everybody, it's Wyvern here with another bit of Total War Warhammer 2 quick match gameplay. This time around we are playing as the vampire counts against the forces of the Skaven on the map MP Crossroads. And for when you're going up against Skaven with vampire counts, you need to consider that you need to have something to shut down their backlines, their artillery pieces, those sort of annoying units. In general, because of the slow nature of the Skaven, you can get away with zombie summons. Nonetheless, you will usually want some units to harass. You also need a front line that can deal with massive plague monks, that can deal with storm vermin in a fairly efficient manner, tile those units up, and chop through lower end infantry. And then you need some anti-large. You need some serious anti-large, because Skaven have quite a few annoying large units. They've got the Hellpit Abominations, they've got Rat Ogres, they've got the Screaming Bells, and they've got Plague Furnaces, units like that, Doom Wheels even. And you'll sometimes see Doom Wheels against vampire counts because they do a lot of damage, especially against typed formations, which most vampire units are. So something to keep in mind, you want some solutions to the infantry mobs so you can hack through them as quickly as possible, something to shut down that back line, and something to deal with large. And so kind of with this build I was kind of hoping to be able to deal with everything, with all of those. And my opponent completely caught me by surprise here with a monstrous, at least numerically speaking, Skaven build. Skaven just have a lot of build varieties, honestly, and I'm always surprised by some of the stuff people come up with, and this is a very cool build. So, from my perspective, I decided to go with pretty generic, pretty yield reliable. Vladdy Daddy, of course, who has been buffed in the past patch. He's of course got the usual melee attack and weapon strength buffs like all the other vampire counts, and he also got Arcane Conduit, so he's a much better caster now. I only came in with Invocation of Nehek and Raised Dead, as well as the Blood Drinker. You don't really need any other buffs for the Graveyard line here. I do also have Master of Beguilement, I think is worth mentioning, and the usual sort of Aura of Dark Grandeur, Hunger, etc. Aura of Dark Grandeur is really solid against Skaven as well, just stacking on top of Fear and Terror and all that sort of stuff is so good. My front line, I do have the Tithe here zoning away, and the front line is 4 Graveguard as well as the Sternsmen anchoring things in the center. And honestly, Graveguard is an amazing unit. I say this almost every time I play Vampire Counts. Graveguard is the most cost-efficient infantry in the game, probably, or one of the most cost-effective infantry in the game. They don't break. They've got 90 armor, silver shields. Against Skaven, they will dumpster basically all of their units except Plague Monk Sensor Bearers and maybe Storm Vermin in a very long fight. But they're just amazing. They've got bonus first infantry, all that sort of stuff, and they just hold forever. And I backed them up here with the new and improved White King. And the White King got a bonus versus infantry. It's got a bonus versus infantry of 14, so I'm hoping that with that it can kind of help cleave through my opponent's infantry. I kept Heroic Killing... I can't even speak, but I'm sorry guys. But Heroic Killing Blow on both of them. So trying to get extra damage in there and hoping to cleave through the Skaven front line. We also do have the Tithe, soak up shots, and then a very wide but fairly small sort of group of flanking units. Dire Pack on one end. These guys are amazing against the Skaven because almost all the large Skaven units, or all the mobile large Skaven units, are very squishy. And these guys will do great against them, against Rat Ogres and against Hellpit Abominations. And they'll also do great against Gun Crews and units like that. They're still decent in the usual Direwolf role. Blood Knights, once again, they got to buff this past patch a little more AP, but more importantly, they'll just dumpster everything large that the Skaven bring to the field, including the armored stuff, despite not having that much AP. They got a buff to their AP recently, so they're really solid. I actually brought a Vargulf as well. This is another experiment. I'm not usually a fan of the Vargulf. I don't like it in campaign. I don't use it very often in a quick match, but I want to try it out here. It does cause terror. It's fear terror. I figure it's not as susceptible to magic damage as, say, Hex Wraiths, and I can just pile it through the front, and it's very quick. Cause some terror. I can still do AP and do well against big targets like these Plague Priests, and yeah, we'll see how it performs. It's got regen, so it shouldn't die too easily. I figured, it could be okay. We do have the Feasters in Dusk on the flank here as well, ready to provide some flanking support. Now, and these guys are also a bit of a hidden gem, I think, in the roster. They've got Stalk, they're very mobile, hit like trucks, at least against light targets, so very solid. For my opponent's build, he decided to do something very surprising. He's got some Death Runners out here on the flank, ready to provide AP support. I don't think this is worth it against Vampires. Vampires don't have much of a backline. You'd be better off just mixing it in with your front line, but still, interesting decision. It's either just pops concealment bombs to stay hidden, not be spotted by these direwolves. My opponent went incredibly infantry heavy, so it's a horde of Skaven slaves in the front. You can see the numbers, over 1,600 troops. Front line of Skaven slaves, Plague Monks supporting them. Plague Monks, of course, with Death Runners can probably tear through Graveguard pretty efficiently, or definitely trade well with them. Some Clan Rats with shields in there. So some mediocre infantry, some decent infantry here, a backline of Skaven Slave Slingers, as well as Warp Fire Throwers. So these guys are not as good as, say, Dwarf Flamethrower, the Dwarf Iron Drakes, but they are cheaper. They do cause magic damage, which could be brutal against something like Karen Wraiths or units like that. They are a bit more mobile. They can reposition more effectively. You can see those filthy rats here marching around with their containers of whatever that is, warpstone or fuel. And I absolutely love the look of the warp fire thrower, the gas masks and stuff. It's crazy, but we'll definitely see how they do here. Some rat ogres to provide AP. So my opponent kind of considered just about everything, it seems, with this build, or had something to cover almost everything. Definitely a little bit of a lack of anti-large though. Rat ogres can do an okay job. Death runners can help, but there's definitely a little bit of a lack of anti-large here. But otherwise, my opponent basically could deal with the front line here. He's got the Plague Priest with a good selection of spells. He's got 2 casts of Plague Rash. He's actually brought Vermin, or he brought Vermintide. He brought Plague, which is a little surprising. We'll see how that does if he uses it. And Pestilent Breath, or Pestilent Birth. I can't even say it, but really bad at talking today. But Pestilent Birth. So that gives you, Plague Monks once again a lot of damage there. And for his Lord, he does have Queek here in the pits. Now with just trophy heads and standing your ground and Verminous Valor. No Warpstone armor, surprisingly, which I actually think would have been good here to deal with Graveguard. Regardless, you can see I get an early charge here against the Skaven Slaves. You can see their morale tanking immediately. They lose about half their HP on the charge there from these Blood Knights, and the Blood Knights pull away. They literally didn't take any damage on the charge there. So they're just going to waltz away like nothing happened. Now I do feign an attack here with the Dire Pack, but one thing you never want happening with Dire Wolves is you never want to fight Plague Monks. You never want to fight anti-infantry units. They will tear you to shreds because you have no melee defense, you have no armor, and literally no armor in their case, and you will get torn apart. Unit of Plague Monks would annihilate these guys. So I don't want to be fighting too close to these Rat Ogres. I want my opponent to commit the Plague Monks into the Graveguard first. Anytime the front line Skaven Slaves are going to get slaughtered, they're going to do nothing to the Graveguard. They might do something to the Tithe, but who cares? The Tithe's irrelevant. So we are pushing in. You can see my Crypt Ghouls are going to start pushing in from the flank. Over here, the Dire Pack actually sits away, and unfortunately, I missed an opportunity to get a charge here on the Blood Knights, or on the Rat Ogres. My opponent gets a great charge. For those of you who don't know, Rat Ogres do have very high charge bonus for a monstrous infantry unit. Most monstrous infantry sit, except like Minotaurs maybe, sit in the 20s basically from charge bonus. These guys sit in the 50 with Frenzy, so they're going to start tearing through these Blood Knights pretty effectively. But as you're going to see, the Dire Pack's actually going to tear them out to shreds as well. They've got 14 bonus versus large, and they're going to jump in here, and they're going to munch on these Rat Ogres in their 30 armor, and their morale's going to tank, and they're just getting shredded. You can see just how fast with those Dire Pack and the bonus versus large and the Blood Knights, these guys just fall apart. On the periphery, you can see the Rat Ogres diving in on top of the Skaven Slaves. They're doing quite a bit of a number on this Graveguard. It's actually a bit of a, that used to be a bit of a classic build. I see it less and less nowadays, but a horde of these big constructs and then Rat Ogres backing up a bunch of Skaven Slaves used to be really common earlier, like about 2 or 3 patches ago. But I don't see it very often. I still think it's reasonably competitive, but regardless, my opponent is kind of doing something a little similar to that here, dumpstering these Graveguard. Now the Plague Monks are positioning, and they're going to be able to tear these guys to shreds. Unfortunately for my opponent, he doesn't have the greatest shots. He is roasting my Tithe, but I just don't care about them. Getting a little bit of a roast here on the Sternsmen, but the White King's in there. You can see I've summoned some Skeleton Warriors. My opponent's shooting was way too clumped, and so these poor Skaven Slaves and the Warp Fire Thrower are getting slaughtered here by Skeleton Warriors. And like I said before, they don't have the melee stats nor the armor of, say, Iron Drakes, so they're not going to do as well. Again, they're not going to be able to last against pressure from even crappy summons like Skeleton Warriors. Over here, the Dire Pack, in the meantime, as well as the Blood Knights, finally do spot the Death Runners. I actually haven't seen them until this point just now, and so I'm actually going to pile them in. You can see my opponent's Plague Monks here finally get breaking to terror from the Vargulf, the Graveguard pushing them away, and over here, though, we're not doing that great in all areas. You can see I did hit Queek with Master of Beguilement. We've got the Graveguard tying him and the Rat Ogres down here, and we do actually get our Feasters in Dusk in the back. You can see just how fast this Warp Fire Thrower gets disassembled by these very angry, very creepy ghouls. Jumping all over these guys. These poor rats just don't stand a chance. Look at them just toppling over, blood spurting out of him. And my opponent's front lines have essentially buckled. They're basically gone. Now over here, not an ideal situation. The Blood Knights and the Vargulf and the Dire Pack are going to go in. At least the Dire Pack doesn't have to worry about an armor debuff. But the Death Runners are getting slaughtered. I do hit all these guys with an Invocation of the Heck. Get another Summon of Skeletons. And so all in all, we're holding pretty okay. You can see the White King here doing his best. But the Clan Rats are holding okay with all this support from the Plague Priest, from Queek. Queek's tearing through the Graveguard. Queek he's a duelist, but he's surprisingly decent against infantry. My opponent gets a Summon of Plague Monks here, so he's going to be able to halt my Graveguard and be a bit of a nuisance there. These Plague Monks over here are actually going to beat the Graveguard because these guys got surrounded by Rat Ogres earlier. But, you know, in most ways we're winning. My opponent gets a little clip there on the Sternsman. And in turn, though, really at this point, even though there's still 2 minutes left in the match, it's starting to kind of fall apart for my opponent. His infantry has been routed, so he doesn't really have support tools. I'm chasing off with skeleton warriors. Granted, these guys, for example, will get slaughtered by the plague monks, or the crypt ghouls here are overextending a little bit, but my opponent just is way too much out of the fight. These rat ogres, although definitely having a very good match against Graveguard normally, they're just too beaten up at this point, and Vlad's in there, debuff, providing his debuff, dropping their morale, doing a little bit of damage. Now against plague monks, Graveguard, even in this bad state, will hold okay. Though I'm, at this point, trying to isolate this pocket of enemy troops. My opponent's plague monks here, slaughtering Graveguard, and training blow for blow, but Vlad's in there, and Vlad's going to be providing huge buffs. And my opponent's infantry, I actually do manage to pursue them off the field, once again, perhaps overextending a bit with my large units. I should have probably been pulling him back sooner. Probably should have just left the Dire Pack to do mop-up, pulled the Blood Knights back, pulled the Vargals back. You can see the Blood Knights actually lost about 15 models in that fight with the Death Runners. Death Runners are pretty solid damage output, so definitely be wary. In the meantime, though, for my opponent, you can see the Plague Priest here getting beaten up by actually some infantry, the White King and good old Vladdy. And I do actually throw Vladdy at Queek, and Queek doesn't have the best melee defense. Vlad has 70 melee attack, so he should have an okay shot, especially now that he's dropping Queek's melee attack. So Queek can't hit him, Vlad can hit Queek, and it's going to be a bad day for the Skaven. Over here, the White King single-handedly taking on a horde of Plague Monks. Pops hero killing blow. I don't actually think he's doing all that much damage. We can look at this guy though, like cleaving through these filthy rats. He looks fancy. He's got his crazy helmet and his odd cloaks and robes there, so he's pretty cool. These guys not so much, and they're getting roasted. And my opponent probably did more friendly fire there than he'd wanted to. But either way, Sternsmen are coming back, and although my opponent has a bunch of infantry kind of coming back now, it's a little too late. Some of these Death Runners will rally, and there's still some stuff left. But you can see at this point the Vargals back in the fight. The White King here is just going to shut down these clan rats. And although I'm going to lose most of my Graveguard, except like the Sternsmen who just never die, my opponents is at this point basically just reduced his Plague Priest and Queek. I actually don't even know if Queek's still alive. Queek's almost dead, so it's going to be a good game as my opponent's army shatters. And a very, honestly, a cool concept. This army was, in my opinion, a pretty cool concept for my opponent. It's something I wouldn't have thought of. I guess he probably has a YouTube and Twitch channel. Either way, if he does, somebody let me know. I'm not entirely sure. I haven't actually. But regardless, it's pretty cool. But either way, pretty cool composition idea here. He's got a mix of some AP in there. Lack of anti-large is a bit of a killer in this build, but otherwise, the idea of using some warp fire throwers is always cool. You just never see these really used. Using Queek, also pretty cool. You don't see Queek enough. But yeah, throw a little bit of anti-large in here. It doesn't even necessarily have to be armor-piercing anti-large, and I think this would be a pretty decent build. Also, be more careful about blobbing your troops. You don't want your warp fire throwers to be clumped up too close to your Skaven slaves. I got like a 3-for-1 snag there with a single summon of skeleton warriors. As for this build, I do think it's competitive. The Blood Knights, of course, dumpstering a lot of units. The Dire Pack, 80 kills. These guys are amazing. Like, a lot of these units, the Feasters and Dust, the Dire Pack, they're amazing against Skaven. Skaven have a lot of units that are very weak against them. Graveguard are an amazing pick against Skaven as well. Obviously, here their kill counts are inflated a bit by clan rats and Skaven slaves, but regardless, they had to deal with rat ogres. They were dealing with Queek. They were dealing with a plague priest, so much more expensive units. They only cost 750 apiece, so keep in mind these guys cost as much as the plague monks, and they were doing really well. Sternsmen, of course, absolute champs. So keep in mind, Graveguard are pretty competitive. If you're trying to figure out what kind of front line you should bring in Skaven, my suggestion is massive Graveguard, because except for Plague Monk Censor Bearers, they will trade well with everything. And if you need to deal with Censor Bearers, that's when you come in with your heroes, with your Hex Ray. Well, probably not Hex Ray; those are really a terrible idea because Censor Bearers do magic damage. But Blood Knights, Black Knights, Vargals, that sort of stuff. That's what you start breaking for those situations. But everything else, Graveguard will do okay. So regardless, good game to my opponent. Had a lot of fun, and I thought this was a really cool build. I do hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, be sure to leave a like and subscribe down below. If you have any comments, any criticism, anything like that, be sure to share them, and I'll respond as soon as I can. As usual, I do appreciate you all for watching, and I will see you all in the next one. Bye for now.